Sorry, but we have already left. While I was using the restroom at the rest area, I got a call from Luke. I wondered what he wanted at such a time. Answering the call, I heard Luke and his in-laws laughing boisterously. "What's going on?" I asked. He said something unbelievable. "We're going to enjoy ourselves with the family. You can head back home and clean or something." I had been looking forward to this trip, as it was after a long time. Even though I had reservations about traveling with his family, I was excited about staying in a luxury inn. To think he'd leave me alone at a rest area like this. Inside the restroom stall, I trembled, feeling deeply betrayed. Even with my anger, I lightly replied, "Okay." Unforgivable. Today was not only our wedding anniversary, but also my birthday, and we came on this trip. I'll make him regret this. My name is Lucy Mitchell. I'm a 33-year-old housewife. I don't have any children and live with my husband, Luke. We married exactly 1 year ago on my birthday. Luke has a romantic nature and always cherished our anniversaries and birthdays. From what I heard during his days living at home, he would be treated to luxurious dinners and trips abroad or cruises for his birthday. Perhaps those memories from his childhood lingered, as he always wanted to celebrate special days in grand style after we got married. As you may have guessed from the birthday story, Luke's family is wealthy. His father is the CEO of Mitchell Securities. His mother, my mother-in-law, has fully embraced the wealthy lifestyle. Luke, being the heir to the company, occasionally showed signs of being a bit too pampered. However, I knew he cherished me, which is why I married him. We initially met at a matchmaking agency. Men from wealthy backgrounds like Luke were popular there. I almost gave up when I approached him, but luckily I seemed to be his type, and that led to our marriage. It might have helped that I wasn't seeking a partner solely for their wealth. Having achieved my childhood dream of marriage, I was ecstatic. But I was unaware that after getting married, my life would take a turn for the worse. A year ago, Luke and I began our marital life in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Luke wanted a bigger house, but I disagreed. Regardless of his family's wealth, a large apartment seemed unnecessary for just the two of us. I suggested we live in a place that matched our means for now, since we could always move if we rented. However, being in the city, our rent was expensive at $1,200, and as a housewife, I felt guilty. $1,200 is nothing to worry about. My dad will sort it out, he said, although he was the heir working at Mitchell Securities. I thought there would be some considerations with other employees. I wondered, is this really okay? Yet the next month, his salary increased by $500. Your dad's amazing, being able to raise your salary just like that. Luke replied, "It was time for a raise anyway. I won't let you face any hardships, Lucy. Count on me." Even though Luke relied on his father's power for money, I felt grateful for the raise and didn't challenge him. "By the way, I'm having dinner with my parents today." "Wait, like a business dinner?" No, just a family dinner. I think I'll be back by 10. Take care." Unexpectedly, Luke, even after marrying me, casually mentioned dining with his parents on a regular evening. Caught off guard and in a daze, I watched him say, "I should get going," and leave the house. Dinner on a weekday? Well, today is TGF after all. I hadn't heard about Luke planning to dine with his in-laws. Usually as his wife, I'd be invited too. Not that I want a free meal, but it's essential to build a good relationship with one's in-laws. I couldn't comprehend Luke's actions and began feeling uneasy about our newlywed life. From then on, there was always something off about our marriage. After that dinner incident, Luke frequently went to his parents' house for reasons like, "It's my cousin's birthday," Or, can't make it today. Mom's asked me to come over. Being a first-time bride, I just nodded, thinking this is normal. But when I had dinner with a friend one day, Luke was absent. She gave me a surprised look. What? He goes home that often and leaves you behind for a cousin's birthday? That's crazy. She had been married for 5 years and had more experience than me in married life. Realizing that her reaction was the common sentiment, I felt embarrassed. You're right. It's weird, but according to Luke, it's normal. Seriously, don't take this the wrong way, but hasn't he really grown up yet? Maybe upon reflection, her comment struck a chord. It's unusual for a 35-year-old, even if he's set to take over his dad's business, to prioritize family affairs after getting married. I regretted not recognizing Luke's true nature before marrying him. Returning home after dinner with my friend, I felt down. I'm home, Lucy. Where have you been? Isn't it normal for a wife to cook dinner and wait for her husband? Mrs. Mitchell, to my surprise, was in the living room. Luke was apparently out, perhaps at a convenience store. Why are you here? Weren't you and Luke supposed to dine out tonight? That got canceled due to some issue at the restaurant. I thought Luke had messaged you just a bit ago. Didn't you check? She pointed it out, and I looked at my phone. Indeed, 10 minutes ago, Luke had messaged that he'd be home early, but that was just about when I got off the train. There's no way I could have gotten home and started dinner in such a short time. Yes, he did message, but I saw it just now. What the heck? This is the problem with kids from single-parent households. You can tell they weren't raised right. My mother-in-law's words stabbed me in the heart. Indeed, I was raised in a single mother's home. After my mom gave birth to me, my father passed away due to an illness. Despite that, my mother did her best to raise me lovingly. I wish she wouldn't say things that belittled my mother's hard work. It has nothing to do with being raised by a single parent. I just hadn't seen the message yet, I retorted, clearly irritated. But she brushed off my comment and changed the subject. Well, anyway, I've always noticed this, but your house is quite small. I think it's average. It's suitable for just the two of us. You can't be serious. I feel sorry for Luke living in such a cramped space. My interactions with my mother-in-law continued to stress me out. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law, perhaps because of their wealth, often seemed condescending. That's why I never got along with them. Realizing further conversation was futile, I silently started preparing dinner. Ignoring me, she went on and turned on the TV. From that day, she started dropping by unexpectedly more often. Even my father-in-law came along a couple of times. Mostly they'd complain about how dirty the kitchen was or how cramped the house felt. Eventually, they'd sarcastically suggest, "You know we have a bigger house. Why not move in?" I absolutely didn't want that. I firmly declined every time. They always visited when Luke wasn't home, so Luke didn't know about their snide remarks. I once talked to him about it, but his reply was, "Why not? Why is living together a bad idea?" I was dismayed when he too suggested moving in. From then on, I realized there was no point in discussing it with Luke, and I endured on my own. Soon, we would be celebrating our first wedding anniversary, which also happened to be my birthday. For your birthday this weekend, I'm thinking of celebrating more grandly than last year. After all, it's also our anniversary, Luke said, coming home tipsy from work. Seeing his flushed face, I couldn't be sure of his sincerity. Knowing his love for celebrations, I felt a hint of excitement. What? Last year, you treated me to a delicious dinner, which was more than enough. That's nothing compared to what I've planned. Let's go on a family trip. A family trip. The term family trip sounded odd for just the two of us. Noticing my confusion, Luke continued, "My parents, cousins, uncles, and all will join. We're heading to a luxury resort in Palm Springs." All those people? And why Palm Springs? Got a problem with a family trip? Or is it Palm Springs you're not keen on? No, it's not that. Honestly, I couldn't understand why my birthday and our anniversary would involve his family, who had nothing to do with either occasion. I couldn't grasp what Luke was thinking. I've always known he's a bit out of touch with the general populace, but I hadn't expected this level of disparity. While the choice of Palm Springs puzzled me a bit, it wasn't a major issue. Sounds fun, right, Lucy? Sometimes you got to let loose and enjoy. Luke, in his intoxicated state, grabbed my shoulders, and I found myself nodding in agreement. For the next week, I couldn't get the trip out of my mind. At first, I was skeptical about going with his entire family, but as Luke said, it's a rare vacation, and I should make the most of it. During the trip preparations, I noticed my growing excitement, and a genuine smile crept onto my face. I knew my in-laws would probably make snide remarks as usual, but I vowed to ignore them completely. Finally, the awaited Saturday arrived. Luke and I headed to his parents' house, our meeting point for the trip. "Well, Lucy, you're late, aren't you? Do you even realize you're the star today?" Right in front of the assembled family, my mother-in-law was quick to throw shade, but it seemed she did realize that I was supposed to be the star, so it took the edge off her words a bit. "I'm sorry, there was traffic." "Excuses won't do. We should leave soon. Otherwise, we'll be late to our luxury resort." "All right, off you go," my mother-in-law waved, as if shooing away a stray dog. I headed to the rest stop bathroom, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Or was it just my imagination? Taking a deep breath inside the bathroom stall, I felt relieved that the trip had been relatively uneventful so far. I hoped the remainder of our journey would be equally smooth. Just as I was settling into that thought, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Luke's name on the display. Expecting him to ask me to pick something up, I casually answered the call. "I'm still in the restroom." Luke, with what sounded like amusement, replied, alongside the laughter of my mother-in-law, "Sorry, but we've already left." There was a moment of stunned silence on my end. Laughter echoed from their side. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We're going to have fun with our family. You should just go home and clean, Lucy dear. Today's trip is just for the Mitchell family." "It's a pity, but you'll have to stay behind." "Goodbye." I was told the unbelievable. I had been looking forward to this trip for a long time. Having his family join us was a bit of a concern, but staying at a luxury hotel had me excited. And now they left me alone at the rest area. I was trembling inside the restroom stall, feeling utterly betrayed. Trying to hide my anger, I responded with a light, "Okay." This was unforgivable. Today was our wedding anniversary and my birthday, and they brought me on this trip. I'll make them regret this. After leaving the restroom, I called someone. The person on the other end was shocked and shared some astonishing news. I asked, "Really?" They responded, "Yes." Then the person on the phone promised to come pick me up. Being left alone at the rest area like this was unbearable. Praying for a timely rescue. An hour later, my uncle came to pick me up in his car. "I'm so sorry to trouble you like this." "It's okay. It's quite an unfortunate situation." "Yes, they're headed to a luxury hotel in Palm Springs." "That means—" My uncle tilted his head in thought, seeming to realize something. "I think that's the case," I replied. "I'm really sorry, but can you please take me there?" I'll take the train back. Got it. The drive there is nice anyway. Uncle gladly accepted my request to go to Palm Springs. About an hour later, we arrived in Palm Springs. Luke and the others came here. In front of us was a luxurious inn with a grand gate. It was a well-known hotel, the only luxury accommodation I knew of that cost $1,000 a night. At the reception, I was told, "Dinner starts at 6 p.m. Please follow me." The person who greeted me with a smile was my mother. "Lucy, it's been a while." "It's been a while, Mom." Dressed in an elegant outfit and smiling gracefully in a manner that could seem somewhat formal to others, it was undeniably my mother. Indeed, this inn has been run by my mother's family for many years, and she currently holds the position of the innkeeper. After becoming a single mother, she began working at this inn, so to me, this place feels like home. I had called my mother from the rest area and was surprised to hear that there was a reservation today from the group at Mitchell Securities. I had a suspicion when I heard they were going to a luxury hotel in Palm Springs, but I never imagined they would be coming to our very own inn. Of course, the family doesn't know that this inn is run by my mother. Still, what a terrible story, Lucy. You can't just let this slide. Yeah, I know. That's why I came here. I see. Why don't we get you changed over here? I prepared to greet them at the dinner table an hour later, at 6 p.m. The in-law family gathered for dinner. I hid in the next room to remain unnoticed. I slightly opened the door to observe the inside. Ah, the spa was amazing. I'd want to come here every day if I could. If it were closer, we could indeed come every day. At the very least, if you become the CEO, we could afford to come here any time, really. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, the subordinates handle all the work anyway. I want to become a CEO soon, too. Luke and his family, thinking they were among themselves, were making some rather crude remarks. But when my mother appeared from the other side of the door and greeted them, the room went silent. "Today, I will be in charge of serving you. Please let me know if you need anything." Seeing my mother bow with perfect grace, there was tangible tension amongst the family. However, when the food was served, they resumed their inappropriate discussions. "It's great that we all could come. We got rid of the bothersome daughter-in-law and the food is delicious." "Perfect. If you say that, she might get angry, you know." "It's fine. She's not really one of us, to be frank. She never was. After all, it would be a shame to have a child from a single-parent family in our household." Hearing her mother-in-law's harsh words, my frustration boiled to an almost uncontrollable point. At that very moment, my mother entered the room with a dessert plate loaded with cake and fruit. Today, I've heard it's Miss Lucy's birthday, and also her wedding anniversary with her husband. May I know where Miss Lucy is seated? In response to my mother's question about where to place the cake, the family looked at each other confused. "Nobody told you that? Excuse me, I'm the innkeeper, and I've clearly heard about it." "Did Luke call? What? I didn't tell anyone." There was an awkward silence in the room, and the in-laws exchanged glances. In the end, the mother-in-law raised her hand. "I am Lucy. I was too embarrassed to mention it at this age, but thank you all for the surprise." Given that the only woman in the room was the mother-in-law, her reaction was appropriate. However, my mother gave a faint smile upon seeing her act. "Hey, what's so funny? Is it strange to be surprised at my age?" "No, not at all. I wasn't thinking that." "Then what? Just bring the cake already." "Yes, but before that, there's something I'd like to share." As the irate mother-in-law barked at her, my mother composed herself. I swallowed hard. Lucy Mitchell is my daughter. Everyone present made a dumbfounded expression and raised their voices in shock. Seeing an opportunity, I swiftly opened the door from the adjacent room and stood next to my mother. Welcome, this inn belongs to my family. I also intend to take over this place someday. In truth, Luke had never met my mother before. While part of it was due to my mother being busy with the inn, Luke and his parents also insisted on not meeting her face to face. I had received a phone call from Luke for our wedding introduction, but he never met her in person. I showed my mother a picture of Luke and explained who he was. It was an unconventional introduction, but I believe my mother had accepted him. Then, from your conversations earlier, could you please refrain from mocking and belittling my mother for being a single parent? That's right. What's with the sudden drama? What grudge do you have against us? Neither Luke nor his mother nor anyone else seemed to realize the extent of the disrespect they had shown me. Exasperated, I let out my anger that had been building up. Grudges? If I have any grudges, it starts with you, Luke. I thought you were a good person when we got married, but it turns out you're a mama's boy. You married me, so you should prioritize me above all else, right? Don't join forces with your parents to mock me. Faced with my undeniable logic, Luke was rendered speechless. My mother just listened quietly to my outburst and to my in-laws. Why do you treat me this way? If you find me such a nuisance, I can leave the Mitchell family right now. What? You'll become a lonely, poor single woman. Yeah. Are you sure about being alone? Both the mother-in-law and Luke sneered, looking back and forth between my mother and me. I stared back fiercely. It's okay. Actually, I'm pregnant, so I won't be lonely. And if I inherit this inn, I won't have any financial worries. The truth is, I found out I was pregnant last week, and I hadn't told Luke yet. Only my mother knew, which is why she wasn't surprised. A child? What are you talking about? I haven't heard about this. Wait, Lucy, if that's the case, it changes things. You should have told us sooner. Upon learning I was pregnant, the family immediately changed their tune. I couldn't stand their fickle and unreasonable behavior any longer and shouted again. No, my decision is final. Let's proceed with the divorce through lawyers. I will live happily with my child and my mother. Saying this, I opened the door to the hall they were in and left. The door slammed shut with a sharp noise. I'm done with this. My child will be happier without that family. Whether trying to change my mind or not, I received over 30 calls a day from Luke and his parents. Eventually, I blocked all their numbers. A few days later, I received a letter from Luke informing me of our official divorce. The letter expressed his regret and pleaded for me to return, but I ignored it and tore it up. I thought he might neglect our child, just like he prioritized his parents over me, and I absolutely didn't want that. Being alone and lonely would be your fate, not mine. I thought he should enjoy his bachelor life. Currently, I am nurturing my child in my womb and discussing future plans with my mother. Once the child is born and grows a bit, I plan to send them to daycare and join the inn's business. The path to becoming the next innkeeper is long, but to raise my child properly, I am determined to work hard.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.